Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
And tonight, we're looking at the role of another of Trump's top team. Steve Bannon is the president's chief strategist, with a regular seat on the powerful National Security Council. But his background as executive chair of the far-right Breitbart News website has made him a controversial appointment. And some reports of his activities behind the scenes in the White House are increasing concerns. Inigo Gilmore has been finding out more.
The protests are loud and growing louder against the new arrivals in the Oval Office. Their target, not just Donald Trump,
everyone knows what that means, right?
But his powerful chief strategist, Steve Bannon.
The unthinkable became thinkable.
The man who helped orchestrate Donald Trump's once unthinkable election victory made apocalyptic propaganda films like this one, Generation Zero.
Nobody is accounting for what they're spending.
In the film, Mr. Bannon says the baby boomers of the 60s became an uncaring ruling elite responsible for economic disaster. This was a recurring and provocative theme when he ran Breitbart, the right-wing website accused of stirring racial hatred in the United States.
A president of the United States should not have a racist at his side.
Alarm from the right as well as the left.
He's a nightmare. The #1 spot in this week's edition of Who's the Real President goes to.
Such is his power and influence in the White House. He's already being portrayed as Trump's puppet master.
Steve Bannon! Yay!
You don't get between Steve and his objective.
Mr. Bannon's dark world view, as outlined in his films and media appearances, speaks of a dystopian America, battling multiple enemies, from its own corrupt elites to radical Islam.
I believe strongly is a crisis both of our church, a crisis of our faith, a crisis of the West, and a crisis of capitalism. We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict.
He's trying to encourage chaos.
So who is Steve Bannon? And is it his vision that's shaping the Trump administration and its more controversial policies?
You can't handle the truth.
At the other side of this crisis.
So what is his truth?
We had the Revolution, we had the Civil War, we had the Great Depression of World War II. This is the great fourth turning in American history. And
Steve Bannon believes America is at an historical turning point, and he sees the corrupt political and business elites as an enemy to be defeated.
Don't believe the establishment. Do not believe the permanent political class. We are on the right side of history. This is going to be a very nasty, long, protracted fight.
His enemies are both at home and abroad. The Christian West, as he sees it, under threat.
And it is a crisis of both of capitalism, but really of the underpinnings of the Judeo-Christian West in our beliefs.
To be brutally frank, I mean, Christianity is dying in Europe and Islam's on the rise.
Stand with our beliefs, but to fight for our beliefs against this new barbarity that's starting. We're now, I believe, at the beginning stages of a global war against Islamic fascism.
He also has a problem with the massive influx of migrants, including many Muslims, to Europe.
It's not a migration, it's really an invasion.
These are not people with thousands of years of understanding democracy in their DNA coming up here.
To try to understand how Steve Bannon came to hold these views, we traveled first to his hometown. Mr. Bannon grew up in a working-class family in this neighborhood of Richmond, Virginia, one of 5 children in a close-knit community where Christian faith was central to daily life. As an Irish Catholic, his Judeo-Christian worldview was initially shaped during his formative years at this Benedictine school, run almost like a military academy.
Orthodox Catholic training from the Benedictines that I think's influenced Steve.
Pat McSweeney grew up close to the Bannon family and went to the same school.
And what was he like?
Combative. feisty, undersized, but played sports and compensated through energy and determination for what he lacked physically.
So he was a scrapper?
Scrapper, yeah. He had to be held back. You didn't have to push him into conflict. He was there to find it, and he never backed down.
Many of Bannon's historical American heroes were assertive, revolutionary figures who came from Virginia, including founding fathers George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, as well as Patrick Henry, who proclaimed here in Richmond, "Give me liberty or give me death."
You've got the ideas and the documents of the Revolution of Independence and Bill of Rights.
Larry Nordvig, a former Virginia Tea Party director, has worked with Mr. Bannon and says the president's key advisor sees himself at the vanguard of historical change.
When Donald Trump talks about making America great again, and Steve Bannon as well, this is the kind of figures they're talking about.
I would say Steve Bannon very much has this sense that we've been handed down this gift and we have to preserve it and throw it forward to the next generation.
A big reader of military history, sees himself as perpetually involved in these grand civilizational struggles. And everything with Bannon is very, very kind of mega and big and is going to lead to a clash.
So he's kind of on a constant war footing, as it were?
Absolutely. Constant war footing, yes.
Josh Green first met Steve Bannon in 2011 and wrote a profile on him. At the time, the man who was to become Trump's campaign manager was working on a promotional film about the right-wing firebrand Sarah Palin, hoping she would run for president.
Everybody in politics back then thought that Palin was going to run for president in 2012. So Bannon had kind of insinuated himself into her inner circle and was kind of a Palin whisperer slash advisor slash documentary filmmaker.
It wasn't something that the machine prepared the way for.
Although Palin didn't run in the end, in many ways his efforts became a stepping stone to his successful Trump campaign. His tactics to promote ideological allies combined with a ferocious media onslaught.
So that's you there?
There's me giving a nice fiery speech that day, and you can see there's Steve Bannon in the background clapping there.
Which is often, you often see him like that with Trump, don't you? You see Trump and then he's sort of lurking in the background, so pulling the strings maybe.
I don't know if I like that parallel, but afterward Steve wanted to meet me, and he actually asked if I would consider running for Congress based on the speech that he just heard. He has used Breitbart effectively to whip up the grassroots. I know the Tea Party, he got their tempers up and got them active.
Under Steve Bannon, Breitbart ran highly provocative articles which appealed to the alt-right, a rebrand of the far-right movement. It includes white nationalists, many of whom publicly supported Trump's presidential campaign. White nationalists share many sentiments with notorious white supremacists. The articles on Breitbart spoke of an us and them America. The website was also accused of pursuing an anti-Muslim agenda. Many women too were outraged by some of the articles, with headlines like "Birth control makes women unattractive and crazy."
He said that all the racism and what have you would wash out. That was his phrase, that eventually they would sort of see the light and drop those objectionable views. But what was important to Bannon is that they were on his side when it came to tearing down members of the establishment.
So he welcomed white supremacy as part of his empowerment thing, as a power struggle.
I don't know that he welcomed it, but he certainly didn't show any sign that he was particularly troubled by it.
With the campaign they ran and the election of Trump, they've really opened the door for white nationalists to feel empowered. And it does seem like all the advice that he's been giving both Trump in the campaign of not being a bridge builder, but of doubling down on increasing people's fear and hatred and marginalizing others.
In Donald Trump, Bannon finally found his vessel, somebody who shared his populist ideas, but who also had the kind of personal force to go out on the campaign trail and convince voters and steamroll critics that Palin and Bachmann and people of their ilk never could.
And steamroll he has done, with the president's chief strategist, insiders say, right in the driver's seat. A flurry of executive orders, including an entry ban to the United States for people from 7 predominantly Muslim countries, have caused outrage.
No hate, no fear. Refugees are welcome here.
It was Mr. Bannon who apparently insisted that American green card holders be included in the ban, with critics saying he simply has a problem with Muslims. But in a recent interview, Mr. Bannon rejected accusations that he's a racist. "I'm not a white nationalist. I'm a nationalist. I'm an economic nationalist," he said. But such denials have done little to quieten his many opponents who are alarmed by his involvement in drafting executive orders. There's also been uproar over a White House announcement that he will have a seat on the National Security Council, an unprecedented move for a presidential advisor.
He does not have an experience in government. He does not have experience in national security. And so to put someone who has his very clear track record as a white nationalist, which is essentially a white supremacist, in the center of national security for the country is quite troubling.
Steve Bannon.
Even the conservative television host Glenn Beck, once a darling of the Tea Party, is troubled by Bannon's power and influence.
Breitbart as a platform for the alt-right. He is on record saying that. He's on record defining the alt-right. He knows what it is. He is a guy who has he wants to tear this system down and replace it with a new system. He is a frightening, he is a terrifying man.
He has this image of being a very incendiary person.
Well, of course he does. But that's tempered with the Bannon I know, who's really a far more subtle person than his manner would suggest. I think he likes that persona, but he's a very thoughtful person.
Send in Steve Bannon.
In Saturday Night Live, he's cast as the all-powerful Grim Reaper.
Hello, Donald. I have arrived. Hi, Steve. You look rested. Thank you.
In a deeply divided United States, Steve Bannon is seen either as the man who will help save America or destroy it.
Can I have my desk back? Yes, of course, Mr. President. I'll go sit at my desk. Yeah.
One thing both sides do agree on, he will have a powerful, pivotal role in the fate of the Trump White House.
Inigo Gilmore reporting that.
I've been getting